What if I were to tell you that 3 plant or animal species go extinct every hour? Would you believe me? Unfortunately, it's true. 3 animal species go extinct every hour, never to return to the planet ever again. This is due to the fact that we are in the midst of the 6th mass extinction that the world has ever seen. Not only is this something that many people don't know about and maybe don't care about, but it could affect people too, so it's something that needs to be looked at. Earth has gone through 5 mass extinctions in the history of its existence. All of these occurred millions and millions of years ago. The first one was called the Ordovician mass extinction, which occurred 445 million years ago. And it knocked out 26% of all marine species, and it was mostly nautiloids, which were distant cousins to squids. The second extinction was the late Denovian extinction, which occurred 375 million years ago. It was knocked out 22% of all marine species, and it affected shallow tropical reefs and areas like that because the climate changed and the water got cooler, so those species that were thriving in tropical environments were negatively affected. The next extinction was called the Permian extinction, which occurred 252 million years ago. It knocked out 93 to 97% of all species, and this included early insects, forest-dwelling animals, the forests themselves, and this was caused by a huge volcanic eruption. The span of this volcano covered the area 7 times the size of France, which is huge, and it lasted for nearly 600,000 years, which is an extremely long period of time if you really think about it. The next extinction, which was the 4th one, was the Jurassic extinction, which occurred 201 million years ago. And it knocked out 76% of all species, and it included reptiles, amphibians, and some dinosaur species. And this one was caused by falling sea levels and a volcanic rift formation, which a volcanic rift is a line of volcanoes that is formed by the plates separating, and then volcanoes can rise through that. And so it's smaller volcanoes but consistent eruptions along a long span of time. The next extinction was the 5th extinction, called the Cretaceous. It was 65 million years ago, and this is the extinction that most of us have already heard of. It's when all the dinosaurs died out. And this also included flowering plants and algae and bacteria and all sorts of other things. And this one was caused by a huge asteroid smashing into the surface of the Earth. And also the continents separating also caused some issues as well. So the main thing that ties all these extinctions together is that they were all caused by natural events. Ice ages, climate change, volcanoes, asteroids, something that there was no control over. It was just a disaster and it happened. However, the 6th extinction, which started in 10,000 BC, which is called the Holocene extinction, is not caused by natural occurring events. It's actually caused by human existence and the actions that humans take. Since humanity has been around, there's been 100 to 1,000 times increase in the extinction of plants and animals from the average rate. Like I said at the beginning, 3 species every hour. This equates to 30,000 species a year, which is a huge number of plants and animals if you really think about it. The loss of all these species can change environments drastically, and that 30,000 is not taking into consideration all the species that have gone undiscovered before they went extinct. So there could have been some tiny little bug in Cuba that has a specific DNA protein that could have had key to curing cancer, but we'll never know because it went extinct before we could find it, which is definitely heartbreaking and is a problem that needs to be dealt with. Another way to think about it is there was a case study done in Africa where they took a tract of land and separated all of the larger species like elephants, zebras, giraffes, the big cats, lions, and only kept the smaller species like rats and all those. Once they separated the bigger animals, the smaller animals really thrived, and the rats especially increased exponentially. And along with the rats increasing, the risk for pathogens and disease transmission went through the roof. So these things are considered negative impacts. And once you take out those big species that are in danger of extinction now, the population is detrimented and affected so negatively. Another way to look at it is a food chain. So let's say we have grass and grasshoppers that feed on the grass, and frogs that feed on the grasshoppers, and snakes that feed on the frogs. What would happen if the frogs were suddenly to go extinct? Let's just say that there was a pesticide from a nearby farm that leaked into the pond and it kills all the frogs. Once the frogs are gone, there's no one to eat the grasshoppers and there's no food for the snakes. So the grasshoppers population goes through the roof and they keep acting normally, they reproduce like crazy, and there's hundreds of them. But then the snakes have nothing to eat, and so their population decreases. This throws off the ecological diversity and the balance of the ecosystem and can cause crazy things. There's an ad put out by the Vancouver Aquarium that really puts into perspective how important some of these species are in relation to predator-prey relationships. And it says if frogs go extinct, you're going to notice. And I really think that this ad has a really impactful message and puts the message clearly. It's not just plants and animals that are being affected, though. It's humans, too, which kind of hits more close to home. The first deaths due to climate change have already occurred. In 2003, there was a European heat wave, which increased the average temperature 18 degrees in the summer months, which is a big deal. It killed almost 35,000 people because that temperature stayed consistent. It didn't drop at night, and it just stayed hot for so long that people couldn't deal with it. And that was in 2003. We're not talking about centuries ago. We're talking about 11 years. Like, that's a big deal. And then in 2006, there was a Chinese province that experienced a massive drought, and 8 million people were in a huge water shortage. This is happening now, and it's happening to us, and it's something that has to be dealt with. Along with natural disasters increasing, infectious diseases can increase as well. Malaria and protein energy malnutrition killed 3.3 million people in 2003 alone. This is mostly due to the fact that the vectors for malaria, which are mosquitoes, thrive and are really successful in environments where there's a lot of water and higher temperatures. So with flooding and climate change where temperatures are raising, the mosquitoes can reproduce and they start carrying these diseases that impact people exponentially. There's an increase in vector-borne illnesses, which are diseases that are carried by animals or plants or a host. The main ones that come to mind are dengue fever, malaria, and West Nile virus, which are all carried by mosquitoes. Like I said, mosquitoes flourish in environments where the weather's hot. In certain countries, third world countries, the medical attention may not be there, and people who get infected with these diseases may not be able to survive it. So increased infectious diseases is a huge problem. Another way to explain this phenomenon is the logistic growth model. It's a model for population growth that examines the growth of the population with taking into account the amount of resources. There's a certain capacity called a carrying capacity that a population reaches, where the population can grow to a certain point, but once you run out of resources, you can't grow anymore. So it's been said that the human population is on the fast track to that carrying capacity where you can't grow anymore. And something's got to give. At this point, it's been animals and plants that are giving and sacrificing for people, but something's got to change because obviously what we're doing now is not working. Thanks for listening.